today at doing some sculpting onto our character, and also have a look at how we can apply some texturing using Vertex Paint as well. The workflow for this is probably not obvious if you just kind of get in and mess around with it. There's a few little tricks, so that's primarily what we're going to cover today. So I'm not too concerned about creating a really good looking object within this tutorial. I just want to move through it fairly fast and concisely so that you know the techniques and you can concentrate on the artistry yourself. Okay, so let's have a look. So you've probably got a character something like this, that's in its kind of like standard T pose here with its arms out. That's good. And you might have, just like I've got at the moment, I've got a mirror modifier. So I'm going to just apply that. Remember, you need to be in object mode when you apply that. So that's all cool. Let me just set that up. So it's a good time to save if you haven't already. And then we're going to move into Sculpt Mode. Okay, now Sculpt Mode, we need to start sculpting on our character. I want to make my character symmetrical, so I'm going to click on the X, which I know is this red line along here, so which is going to work for me. Your character might be facing in the Y, or you might want to even use the Z, so you can change those up as you need to. I'm going to turn on Dynatopo, and that's okay. I don't need to worry about any of those, but what I also do want to do is I want to change relative detail to constant detail. So change that first, and then change this 3 to like, I don't know, 32. All right. So that is going to set us up so that when we start to, work with sculpting our character, it's going to lay it up properly. All right, so what I'm going to do, what have we got here? Clay strips, that's pretty easy. Okay, so I've got this character. I can change the radius of how much it affects here. So I'll bring this down and I can just immediately start drawing on, and I can start kind of like sculpting in some shape to the head, and it's pretty easy, okay? And you can see that it's symmetrical. I'll just wiggle it around just so you can see how this is working. And there's lots of different tools here that you can use that are going to help you with your sculpting. Okay. Now, if you've got something like a Wacom tablet, you can obviously get this. You can start to use the pressure of that system, and that's really going to help you kind of like get some finesse to the radius and to how powerful it is. Not you can custom set it up really nicely, but just for the moment I'm just slapping it down with a mouse and that's getting the job done. Okay, you can see that there's a little bit of chunkiness there. That's okay, we can smooth that out later on. Okay, so you're just kind of working, for starters, just trying to get your kind of basic forms in and making it work. Okay, so you can mess around with all those details, but let's just say, oh yeah, that'll do just for the moment. And what I'm going to do then is just really quickly, let's have a look at the Vertex painting mode. All right, so let's pop this into object mode just for a sec, and what we're going to do is we're going to come down and add a color to this. Okay, so just the basic principle BDSF shader, no big deal at all, just so that we've got that handy, and we'll mess around with that a little bit later on. Okay, so next thing we're going to get into doing some, we want to do some painting, and we want to do some vertex painting. Okay, so this is a good way to go. Okay, now we've got to fold out our tools here once we're in this Vertex Paint, and you'll see that there are color palettes. There's an F palette there that's kind of just set up ready to go, or you can set up a custom palette as well. You can just add in a new palette and you can be away, but I'm just going to use this existing one. Okay, so let me just grab a color Okay, and we can use F just like we can use with the clay as well, and I can just start to just paint this in really fast. Okay, that's probably not the greatest color, because often you know that most 3D apps will show a magenta, which means that we're missing an image texture. So let me just kind of like tune this in a little bit. We'll add a bit around here, a bit over there. Okay, that's cool. That will do us just for the moment. And then as we sort of work along, we can start to tune this up a little bit more. Okay. Right, so what we want to do, and this is kind of the slightly less intuitive part of the exercise, is we need to do some baking. And in order to do that, I'm just going to bring this across, and I'm going to just throw this into my shader editor. Now, we've also got like these tabs at the top. You can use those. Doesn't really matter either way. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add an extra node. So at the moment, we've just got this one color, and you can see that it's just running to our surface here. If I zoom in a little bit, and I'll get rid of that, so we've got a little bit more space. So yeah, we've got our basic color, which is our white, running onto the surface. Yet what's going on here in Vertex Paint, we can see that we can see the color, but if we move up to rendered mode, we can see that actually this texture is applied, so we can only see that texture in Vertex Paint. So there's a few tricks that we need to do. First thing we need to do is we actually need to add in an image texture into this system, and we'll use that later on. Okay, so it's no sort of big deal, but we do need to add something in there, and we also need to UV unwrap this object. So I'm going to go to our UV editor. I'm going to get out of Vertex Paint for a sec, and I'm going to go to my object, and then I'm going to go into edit mode, and I'm going to select all, and I'm just going to unwrap. I'm going to do a smart UV project. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so now we can see there that our object, we've unwrapped. That's all fine. We can see some recognizable parts. If you want to get a bit more technical and finesse this unwrapping, yeah, you can get right into it. You can set up all sorts of different points where it'll unwrap, you know. That's a good way to go. There's plenty of videos on that. It's a bit time intensive, so we won't cover it now. I'm just going to add in, I'll add in a new image. That's cool. Okay. So we'll go back out of edit mode to object mode. So we've unwrapped our character. We've got that kind of mesh that we can deal with. That black, we can see that showing on the object at the moment. So let's go back to our shader editor. And remember, we've still got that Vertex Paint sitting there. If we come back to Vertex Paint and we come back to our, our solid view. So rendered view is never going to show it, but back in like our solid view, we can see that it's still sitting there. I might just get rid of that transform palette by hitting the N key, just so we've got a bit more space here. Okay, so what do we want to do? We want to actually bake this out. So in order to do that, we've actually got to push the it onto the surface for starters. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and add. I'm going to add an input, and we're going to add Vertex Color. Okay, so that's easy. Excuse me. And we're also going to add an emission. Okay, so we're going to go add. Now, an easy way, if you know what you're looking for, you can just like type it into here. Cool. Bring it down. Okay, so let's unhook that for the moment. We're going to unhook the color, or we're going to hook up the color. Okay, so, and then we're going to pop that down onto there. Okay, so now we've got our vertex attribute, coming across to our mission shader, and then it's applying it onto the surface. So let's have a look at the surface of our object now. And you can see that that's looking good. It's actually applied it. It doesn't show any shadow or anything at the moment because it's like an emission. So it's just like a pure emission. There's a few other things. You can apply these dirty vertex colors, and they'll give you a little bit of shading, kind of like in different spots, especially like under the neck and things like that. But okay, so that's good. We've got it applied, but we can't really work with it that much at the moment. So what we're going to do is go across and switch from Eevee. So I've clicked on this little camera back, which lets me select my render settings to bring it down to cycles. That's cool. And then I'm going to come down to bake, and I'm going to fold that down. And at the moment we've got bake type combined, so let's get rid of that. And let's come down to we want emit. That's cool. And that should be pretty right to go. Okay, but remember that we got to make sure that we've got this image slot kind of like as part of our mix here, otherwise it will refuse to bake. So let's click on bake, and let's just make sure that we select refuse to bake then. So let's click on Untitled, and now let's just tell it to bake, and now it'll bake. Okay, so that's the problem. If it doesn't have this texture slot, doesn't like it very much. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So let's go back to our UV editor now, and we can start to see, and we'll come out of Vertex Paint and we'll come back to object mode, and you can see now that it's created the mesh based on what we're doing before. So what we can do now is just so you can see, if I go unwrap, you can see all the mesh here. It's applied over the top of it. It's also given us some extra, extrapolated out some extra seams when we have baked it, to give us a little bit of leeway, so we don't see any nasty kind of like seams or anything like that. So that's cool. Okay, so what else do we need to do? We've nearly completed the full cycle. We've just got to come, we've got to come back to our shade editor, and now we can unhook this. We don't need it. Okay, and we can, so it's our output, so we've got our image going into our shader, and then we can hook this back up to here, and then we'll let it do its thing. Okay, we'll just bring this across, and you'll see now if I come out of if I come out of edit mode, we can see that I've got the we've got the texture on the surface now, which is a lot better. Obviously you need to work on your lighting and all that sort of stuff. We've got our then we can work with our shader, so we can change the roughness, we can change metallic, subsurface scattering, all that sort of stuff. But that'll give you the basics of getting your color in that you can work from. Then you can, if you want to, you can export that map out into Photoshop that we created, and then you can fine tune that more and bring it back in if you want to, get some more realistic textures and that sort of thing. There's a few other tips and tricks, but that's really, I think, a good start, and helps to maybe demystify that process a little bit. So thanks everybody, and I'll see you